none of us want to be seen or want to be known as people who have struggles and problems, but we all have them. It doesn't matter if you want to be known as that or not. The reality of it is we're going to go through difficult times. The Bible tells us that.
Yeah.
There are going to be trying times. There are going to be trials. And we get to choose how we want to deal with those trials. And if we want to do it alone, or if we want the hand of God guiding us through that.
Well, welcome to another episode of What to Say and How to Say It. Today, we're going to be talking about how what you think is the problem, hey, it's not the problem. That is one of the things we notice big time in coaching and in marital counseling. And I have Kyle Hargrove, our favorite licensed professional counselor, with us today. And just so you know, this isn't considered therapy or anything like that. We're talking about concepts. What you do with your life is between you and the Lord. But there's a lot of common themes that both he and I see, and there's definitely some truths in relationships that need to be sorted through and can be talked about. And so that's what we're doing here today. If you want more information about any of this stuff, go to our website, greaterimpact.org, and grab our free little PDF that gives you info on how to stop walking on eggshells. So let's dig into this. Kyle, when you hear the problem's not the problem, what comes up for you in that space?
I think the thing that comes up for me in that space is how easily we can be deceived, or how easily we can justify and deceive ourselves. None of us ever want to be perceived as individuals or families who have problems, or at least have problems that are, of a major significance. Mm-hmm. I think all of us want to be perceived as somebody who's, by golly, we have it together. And, we're on the fast track to going somewhere. We don't know where yet, but we're going somewhere. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. We want to feel confident and competent, and we want to, to be forward moving in everything that we do. But I think if we get to the place where we're unable to or unwilling to admit that we got, little chirpy issues that if we don't deal with turn into not so chirpy issues, but much larger ones. Mm-hmm. That the pressure of those finds a way out, and then we have a problem. Only what comes out is not necessarily the problem. It's just it's a byproduct. It's a symptom of. It's something to mask the real problem. Mm-hmm. And, there's a lot more to say about that too, about, why is this so frequently covered up? What gets covered up? Secrets.
And you see that I think one of the most common places we see that is in discussions and conflicts around money. I had a beautiful connecting moment with my husband around money. Like, how often do you hear that said? But this is true. A number of years ago, we were talking about how I felt about horses. And, I probably need a 12-step or something. Like, I haven't, it's been with me my whole life. But I ended up telling him the story about how I'd walk to my friend Mandy's house, and she had all of the, whatever brand name it was, statue horses, right? And I didn't have any of them. And I'd walk by this pasture and I'd stop and I'd feed this horse. He was this Palomino. He was beautiful. He'd come to the fence and I'd feed him. And then I'd go to her house and play. And my parents bought me a motorcycle. Like, I wanted a horse and I got a motorcycle because they were into motorcycling. Okay. Yeah, I know. And dirt biking. And it was fun. But it didn't love me back. So it really didn't fulfill that need in me, even though it was a fun thing to go do. And my husband and I are talking about, how it's so important to me to spend XYZ a month on these horses, and how I've been this way my whole life. And so when we have this stuff back and forth about money, it makes me feel unknown. And he's like, what? They had no idea, right? And of who would anyway, right? It made no sense. But in my head, the monetary expression of investing in this thing that is so her just meant the universe to me. And he had, I remember him saying, I didn't know this about you. And he felt we had this beautiful connecting moment because I shared my 10-year-old self wishing and longing, and now I have this thing happening in my life as an adult, and it means so much to me. He had no idea until I told him about it. But when we would have conflict over money, it wasn't just about money for me. It was about who I am as a human, right? And I didn't even know that was in there until it came out, and in a beautiful way. Thank God for that, because that couples thing and money, it's never about the money.
Right. And that's, we talk about the things that bring couples to therapy as often as anything, or that get in the way of relationships. And typically the top two have forever and probably forever will be money and sex. Mm-hmm. And those are two areas, I think, where lots of other issues in life find an easy out. Money gets very personal. Especially when we're having a conflict about it, it gets very personal for, especially for the person who feels like they're being told they've got to do differently. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot more personal than the sexual relationship between partners as well. And so there's a place where control can be gained, mm-hmm. Where, we can hold something over somebody's head. There's a lot of things, that end up being symptoms of a problem that it's not always that deep and it's not always that hard to find. It's just that we're not always all that into looking inside and saying, oh, let me see all the problems that I have. Let me go digging those out and let me put them up here and look at them and talk to them. And, that's not what we want to do.
No, we don't like that. But boy, howdy, does it make everything so much better when we're that humble. Oh my word. I facilitated a marriage intensive workshop the last couple of weeks, and we spread it out over 4 days, 4 evenings. And one of the exercises I ran had each person looking at themselves and talking to God about a list of behaviors, and their disrespectful behaviors, different things that people do that are disrespectful, like interrupting and demeaning or dismissing or arguing, and arguing the positive, even, just all the stuff that people do that's disrespectful. And there's a big, long list. And then I'm not doing this to them, by the way. I just ask a question, give them the list, and let them visit with God. So, and we set it up so that there wasn't any condemnation. They were reminded that there is no condemnation in Christ Jesus. This is just information. So it was really growthful for them to look at where they were doing those things. And then I heard the question, and I think this was inspired, come out of my mouth. So spend some time with the Father, understanding what it's like to be your spouse when you're like this. And
wow.
Yeah, wow. Like, that's a pretty grainy, gritty question, right?
Yeah.
And so, but what came of it was really beautiful. They did that. And then I just opened up the floor and said, okay, who'd like to share what God did? And so each one of the couples, one of the persons would start talking, and they'd talk about how grieved they felt for their partner and how they'd been behaving and what it was like for them. And what they were doing basically was validating their partner's experience. I had no idea this was going to happen this way. I run the exercise a lot, but a little bit differently. And so I'm watching this play out, and the partner is hearing their spouse validate what their experience has been. And the non-speaking person is crying, and they're having.
So let me interject. So yeah. I'm validating what you feel based on my aberrant behavior.
Right. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. And the Lord worked that out, right? Like, it was just the compassion of Christ showing up in, husband A saying, well, sometimes I'm disrespectful by not asking her questions and by interrupting her and by dismissing her ideas. And when the Lord showed me what that was like for her, I just am so grieved, because it it cuts to the core of who she is, and her heart is to help me. And like, he's seeing all these things, like I could not have pulled this off, but the Lord revealed all this stuff to them. And his wife, and this is just an example, I'm kind of mingling everybody together with all those, to not be specific, but the wife was just, in every case, the other spouse was just moved by what they heard their partner saying and validating their experience. It was very powerful. And I think that's kind of the point of all of this. We think it's about the context, about, who was late getting so-and-so from school, or, you forgot to get milk again, or, how come you haven't paid this bill? This is my lab bill. And isn't this important to you? Like, and it's just like, no, I just forgot, but it's never about the context. It's not about the thing that's happening. It's about what's underneath that and what it represents to the other person. And when we can listen and validate that, our partner feels really seen, and it's life-changing for them.
Years ago, even decades ago, a family came to me in my private practice. They were court ordered by a judge to get family therapy. And the incident that occurred that led to this court order, they thought was about cookies.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they thought this was about chocolate chip cookies. What happened was, on a Sunday afternoon after church, everyone came home, and there was to be a youth event at the church that night, for which the mother and daughter had committed to make 12 dozen cookies. So father and son leave the house, go somewhere to do father and son things. And while they're gone, the mom and daughter make all the cookies and get them all set out on the counter to cool. And then they go to do something. And in the meantime, father and son come back to house. And within 10, 15 minutes, as it would happen, there were 3 or 4 dozen less cookies. And so daughter and wife return, see that there's been a theft, for which there is no evidence.
Yeah, it's already been gone.
Any longer. They couldn't blame it on the dogs. They didn't know that's what the cookies were for. Anyway, this turns into a massive blowout that gets so loud that a neighbor calls the police.
Wow.
Because they're afraid somebody is dying at the hand of another person in that household. And when it's all said and done, there's a ticket issued to somebody for something, and they end up going, to the judge, and the judge says, look, we'll take care of all this, but what I want you to do instead is I want you to get some counseling. So they come to me and tell me the story and are looking at me like, so who's wrong?
Right. Judge this right now. Bring the verdict.
And I'm sitting there listening to it going, oh my goodness, all this going on and all that's occurred, and you still think this is about the cookies? Mm-hmm. Oh no, it had nothing to do with cookies.
Right.
But it had to do with some other, issues within that family unit that needed to be addressed, needed to be identified, and they thought that everything was just going along just fine. But something found a place to come out. Mm-hmm. Okay. All the issues that were bigger and that were boiling underneath the surface, they found a place to come out.
Yeah.
And this was it. And whereas it could have been simply handled, and, dad and son could have run back to the store and got some slice and bakes, and we just throw them in there with the homemade ones and nobody ever knows the difference. But no, instead this turned into,
World War III.
Yeah. A big wrestling match, that people are buying tickets to come see. So, none of us want to be seen or want to be known as people who have struggles and problems, but we all have them. It doesn't matter if you want to be known as that or not. The reality of it is we're going to go through difficult times. The Bible tells us that.
Yeah.
there are going to be trying times. There are going to be trials. And we get to choose how we want to deal with those trials. And if we want to do it alone, or if we want the hand of God guiding us through that. And so it's just so important for us to understand that what we see as problems, when we see little things coming up, maybe consistently or persistently, or maybe for the first time, and go, well, is that really, that may be something new. Is that something that we really deal with on a regular basis? Or is there something else going on behind it?
Yeah. And so often, if we could just be humble in that moment. Yeah, we ate all of those. And yeah, we could have thought through that. Gosh, I'm really sorry. No kidding, you're mad. How do we fix this? And then everybody's laughing about it and you figure it out, right? But there's something in us, and to varying degrees. Like I made a scheduling mistake that affected a bunch of people. And I made the mistake. I know ahead of time I'm bad at this, right? This is not a thing I do well. And I kind of, I set myself up to do the best I could, but it still went poorly. And then somebody says something to me and my initial response is defensiveness. And thank God I didn't do anything with it. But I was like, okay, Lord, what is that? Like, they're not wrong. And I knew this was going badly. And I knew this, like, why am I at all defensive? What is that, Lord, within me? And he's like, girl, I love you, but that's pride. So what is that? Where does that come from? And I had this really neat little exchange with him. And I realized I find immense security in being right. Even as, and the Lord's grown me so much in being humble. And now I'm proud that I'm humble, like for real, like that's a joke, but kind of not. Anyway, so I've grown, but still it's a leadership-y kind of thing to go, you know what, you're right. I'm so sorry. And for whatever reason, and I hate that. I hate that that's even in me at all. Like and most of the time it's not, but sometimes it'll pop its stupid, evil little head up. And when that happens, thank God I don't always react to it. Sometimes I do. And that's terrible. Like I lost it the other day. It wasn't big and ugly or anything, but I haven't been feeling well. And, something happened and I had a nice, quick little retort and I got looked at and stared at and like, you know what? I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. But it was there in the first place, geez, everywhere I go, there I am. And I'm the biggest sinner on the planet. Like, I get this. That's in the Bible. And help me be humble. Like, I hate that prayer.
Well, there's cause and effect too.
Yeah.
When you have an issue, a prideful issue, or whatever you want to call it, about it's really important to me, and I feel very secure when I know I'm right. Well, understand that what do we call that? Throwing shade.
Yeah.
Okay. But if it's so important for me to be right, that means somebody either has to step up, or I'm going to point the finger at who I think is wrong.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So this has it's almost like it has new lives, because I choose to move one direction that makes me feel secure, whether it's right or wrong. There are going to be consequences for that.
Oh, I know, right?
I point them out or not, I'm pointing them out.
Well, and thank God, literally, thank God. I don't know what I could have done that would have been horrible and ugly, and I'm thankful for that too. But if I'd have hung on to, no, I'm right. I knew I was wrong. I knew it, but there was some little piece of me that was still kind of not liking that. And it's a security thing. And so what's that about? And the Lord was like, Nina, you're not stupid. You're a smart girl, but that also is from me. You can't put your security in what you know. Put your security in who I am. And that just really touched me. And I want to get to the place where I'm not thinking of myself in any way, shape, or form. And I don't anywhere near like I used to, but when I do, it really bothers me.
Yeah.
So much so that I'm fessing up to a bunch of people I don't even know, like right now.
But the glorious thing about that is that it used to not bother you.
Oh,
there was a time when it's just who you were, and you probably said, that's just who I am. That's just my personality.
Right.
Well, now it bothers you. And that says so much about how far you've come.
Uh-huh. Well,
That
and
it,
then I even noticed.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh,
it's
that's
important that we recognize the things that we do that, that are not positive for relationships and not positive for the way people perceive us. But it's also important to realize the ways that, that God's grown us, or that we've
Mhm.
allowed ourselves to be grown. My dad and Dr. Phil both used to say, or have said the same thing. I've heard him say it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. So
Sometimes
that
you learn.
that idea of being right,
Yeah.
it's about winning. It's about, winning, 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 winning. And we have to understand that sometimes we're not right. Sometimes we didn't win the argument. We didn't win the race. We didn't win whatever we didn't win. But there's always something to be taken from it
Mhm.
if we choose to look for it and accept it.
Well, and I want to redefine what it means to win, because in a relationship, if your spouses especially, or with your kids, oh, that whole being right thing, and coming off looking like you know what you're doing, and that perception stuff, the enemy uses that. So winning is really about, are we winning? Do we both feel good at the end of this? Do we feel connected? Is there a relationship? And versus I'm right, you're wrong. What if we both can be right here? Or if, at the very least, what if I can at least validate that you feel this way, even if it seems crazy for me? That is your reality. So can I meet you where you're at, like Jesus does, and love well in that?
And I love the way you talk about frequently. I've heard you say it many times before, that to be able to see a conflict as a potential connection,
Mm-hmm.
for us to be able to connect through conflict, I think is what you say. And if we have this, I got to be right or I have to win attitude when we come to conflict, that's never going to happen.
Right.
But when that happens is when we realize, if I have to be right, that means somebody has to be wrong.
Yeah.
If
That's
I have to be the winner, that means there has to be a loser. So that's lose lose.
mm-hmm.
We're talking about a relationship and wanting to, wanting things to be strong and solid and well put together in that relationship. We have to understand that in that moment of conflict, it has to be about resolution.
Yes. And
It
you
has
talk
to be
about that
about,
a lot.
I do. I have a lot of opportunities to talk about. Yeah. And I've lived it enough times, where it actually pops into my head sometimes when I see myself moving in that direction of saying, boy, you really want to win. You want the win here, don't you? You know,
That's pride
Alex,
in us, isn't it?
yeah. Alex, I'll take the win for the win.
Yeah.
No, the win is a loss when it comes uh, to building a relationship that's built of something other than one person in a position of strength and control and the other one not.
Mm-hmm. Would
And
you
that's,
agree? Would you think it's an accurate statement to say that most of our conflicts come from an issue with pride?
I don't think there's any question about that, because most of our negative feelings and our insecurities come from a place where we feel like we don't have control.
Mm,
Okay. And control is something that we all desire. It's a human trait. It's pretty much our default setting. I want to control me. I want to control my life and the things around me. I don't want other people and other things and other organizations being in control of me. So when you look at those insecurities coming from that standpoint, yeah, I don't think there's any question that it's about pride, or that it at least is well rooted in it.
yeah.
Whether that's the only thing it is or not, it's at the core.
So the problem is not the problem, and often it's pride. That's where I'm landing. Well, thank you so much, Kyle. This has been a great discussion again. I hope it's useful for our listeners as they're navigating relationships with their spouse. And I hope you'll tune in for another episode and see how you can connect more deeply with God, yourself, and others, and bring Him joy and glory as you figure out how to do things differently than the world does. Thanks for being here.